my channel. As you probably already know from the title, today I'm going to be showing you how I transformed this vanity from this tired looking paint job to this beautiful, gorgeous, pink, yes, sophisticated vintage vanity. It was a lot of work, so this video is definitely going to be a long one. I really contemplated splitting it into two parts, but I feel like watching just the prep is kind of boring without a reward at the end of seeing the finished product. So yeah, I went ahead and put it all in one. Hopefully you guys have some time to watch it. It was definitely a lot of work, and I did this over the course of a few months actually, because when we first found Vanity, we were still working on our wedding. Our wedding was DIY. So yeah, it took a while, but it was definitely worth it in the end, and I knew I wanted to spend the time cleaning and prepping so that it would look the way I wanted it to look. The paint job that I had was over, it probably was 3 coats of paint, or not 3 coats, but 3 different times that it had been painted. So there was a lot of paint built up that had gotten into the ridges and crevices, and I wanted to get that clean so that all of the detail would pop more once I got done with it. I'm gonna start the video with the vanity I already stripped. My sweet husband was trying to help me because he knew that, you know, I wanted to get working on it. So he had already stripped it. I think he did 2 coats of, or two layers of stripping by the time I got to it. So most of the paint was already off, but there was a lot more stripping, you guys. There was a lot of paint on this piece. So I'm gonna show you exactly what he did, because I'm gonna do it again, even though it's already done, but it needs to be done again and again, as you will see. So yeah, I'll start with that, and if you guys wanna, you know, see how it turned out and all of the process, just keep on watching. I'm gonna jump right into it. You're gonna need a latex brush. This is a 2.5-inch brush. Any brush will do, actually. You can apply, this one was what I had. You can use any brush, preferably a cheap one that you don't mind getting damaged. Some gloves to take care of your hands. This stuff is not really all that harsh, but you don't want those chemicals in your hand. A little container to put the product in, and we're gonna just jump in and apply it. You want to cover the entire surface. If you're working outside, you don't want this in direct sunlight, because it will dry faster before it gets to doing all the work that it needs to do. So make sure you lather it on, and just like a thick coat of that all on the piece, getting the crevices, getting all those little corners and hard to reach edges. Just be really diligent because all of that paint needs to come off. So I'm moving here into the mirror, same thing, just getting everywhere, make sure it's completely coated. This is what it looks like after it has sat for about 30 minutes. I'm gonna use this wire brush to remove some of the excess, and then this toothbrush. If you can see there, scraping all of that off, and it should come off really easily. Because this piece has so much detail, I had to get a smaller brush, and this toothbrush was kind of helping me out. I ended up having to strip multiple times. There was a lot of paint in here, guys, and I really wanted all the detail to pop, and because the paint was so accumulated in there, it was kind of filling in all of that detail, and that's what I was trying to get rid of. So it was definitely a labor of love. I did this process so many times, and it was definitely time consuming, but it was so worth it. You can see all of that gunk coming off of the piece, and this part, although it was really long and you needed a lot of patience for this, it was very satisfying just to see all of that dirty paint come off of my piece. So once you've done that, you're gonna need some lacquer thinner, and make sure you brush it in to kind of water it down so that it comes off faster. Because that stuff is so thick and it was really in there, you kind of need to water it down and absorb it with a rag. So that's what I did. I used this nail setter to get into these crevices and to kind of scoop it all out. Ignore the sun, then I tangled waves come undone. But if the moon falls by
and our faithful bodies won't die. And they'll say, where did we go?
So this is what it looked like once I had done all of that process. As you can see, this dried out already. I think this is the next day actually, and you can see all of the hard crusty paint setting in there again. Same thing with this piece at the bottom. There's quite a bit of paint left, and honestly I could have left it like this. I really could have, and just painted over it and be done with it. But again, I wanted all that detail to pop, and this was such a beautiful piece that I really wanted to clean it up. I wanted all those pieces that were filled in with paint to come off. So time to call in the big guns. We are going to use this nasty chemical strip. It is disgusting, you guys. You want to do this in a well ventilated area, and definitely wear your gloves. It is really strong, and as you can see, I'm gonna pour it into the top. It looks fairly clean, but it's not quite where what I want it to be. Again, I could have left it how it was, but I really wanted this to be clean. And as you can see, there is quite a bit of stain. I think this is the original stain. I had gone through like 3 or 4 layers of paint already, and this is the original finish on this piece. So I'm down to that. This is the last time I'm gonna strip it, and then once I'm done with that, I'm going to clean it. I'm using a smaller wire brush this time and a spatula. Whatever you have on hand that will get the job done. Just be gentle enough and make sure you're using enough paint thinner to water it down so that it comes off faster.
Bodies won't die. They'll say, where did we go? They'll say, where did we go? They'll say, where did we go?
So the next step here is to sand off any excess. As you can see, this piece is fairly clean at this point. I'm going to sand off, get in the crevices and sand off some of that paint that dried out again once I was done with the paint stripper, lacquer thinner and paint thinner. So a lot of cleaning, a lot of prep, you guys, but it's going to be so worth it. I promise all of the work is going to be worth it. Just be patient. Make sure you set up your stuff outside on a day that you can dedicate a full day for this, so that you don't have to break it down and put it back up every day. Once I'm done sanding, I'm going to do the same thing again. Wipe it with paint thinner so that I get any excess off, and we are ready to paint.
Did we go? The story goes on.
So you guys, at this point, I was really contemplating just restaining this piece. The wood was looking really nice, and if you see the drawers on the front, I'm gonna show it to you here in a second. They are so beautiful. So I was contemplating painting the rest of the piece, the mirror, in those pieces that have detail, but leaving the original wood finish. Look at that. It is such a pretty finish. And I bet if I had sanded it, look at that detail. Oh my goodness, I really was contemplating that, you guys. I love painting furniture, but this was a tough decision. I ended up going with the paint, and this is what I'm going to be using. It is Sweet Pickins milk paint, and that is what I'm going to use for the entire piece. This is going to be my base coat, and in this coat I'm going to use Flour Sack, which is their off-white paint. I ended up mixing a little bit of Sweet Pickins First Crush, which is the color I'm going to be using on the top coat, not top coat, on the main color of the piece. So I ended up adding a little bit of that, not too much. I just didn't want it to be stark white in case it showed through, and just to give it a little bit of dimension. To do this, to mix the Sweet Pickins milk paint, all you have to do is have some warm water, and there is instructions in the packet. So you add warm water and shake it really well. I'm using a blender bottle, the one that has that little bowl, the whisk in there to kind of blend it. You can use an immersion blender, or you can use a spoon or a whisk. This happened to work out just fine for me. So it looks like a milkshake for reals. It is so thick and creamy because it's frothy on top, and that was kind of a problem because the bubbles from that froth don't let the paint lay flat. But this was a really thin coat. I added some extra bond into this, and extra bond, what it does is it helps it adhere better so that there's no chipping or cracking onto this piece. I wanted a little tiny bit of chipping and cracking, not too much, because I wanted it to be kind of clean and solid. So this base coat, it's going to have my extra bond, and the following coats won't have that because you only need it on the first coat that you paint. So again, this is a very watery base coat, just so that everything adheres to this. Here it is. You can see those kind of, I don't know if you can see those bubbles that I was talking about, but you just gotta make sure you get in there and brush it and brush it and brush it and brush it again until it lays the way that you need it to lay. I ended up switching to a chip brush in here now that I'm looking at it. Because I was using the dusty before and it wasn't working the way I needed it to. Alright, so the day has come and gone. We're gonna move inside, and I'm gonna start painting my overall color, which is gonna be Sweet Pickins First Crush. I mixed it up and put it in a container, and I'm just gonna go ahead and apply it. So this is the color I want, and that is really stinking pink. That is way too pink for my liking, but that's not the goal. I have this candlestick. I don't know if you can tell. Hopefully if I move it, you can tell that it's been aged, distressed already, with clear wax and then dark wax, and that is the goal. So if you see them in contrast, this is what I want, but we have to go through this to get to this. So I was testing it on this one, and I really like it, but I watched this, and so I've been really debating whether or not I need to wax or do polyacrylic on top. So there's two things to take into account. The finish is going to be slightly different, and so I tested it on this piece of wood. Hopefully you can see. This half has polyacrylic, and then I put some aging wax, dark wax on it to age it, and it's a lot shinier than this is. This is just clear wax on it. And obviously this is just one coat. So once you buff it, it will be a little bit shinier and it hardens. Once it cures, it's cured. And it's gonna stay for a long time. I'm so torn. Part of me wants to do the polyacrylic because I know the countertops will probably get cups with makeup brushes. And if I'm using this myself, I'll probably be putting makeup on and have a beer while I'm doing that. And so, although I'll probably put a coaster on it, so it'll be fine. I just don't know. The polyacrylic, I can wax and age over polyacrylic, as you can see in this part. But it has a different finish. It's shiny. I don't want it to be shiny. And it's not high shine, but I don't want it to be shiny because I'm going for a vintage, aged, worn look. Waxing is a lot more work because you have to like buff it in and then let it dry and then come and shine it and do it again once it dries every few hours. Whereas polyacrylic, because it's water-based, it would have probably dried very quickly and I would have already been on like second or third coat. I'm sorry if it's like kind of dark, the lighting is not the best. Usually I film outside, but yeah, I'll see if I can edit it so it looks a little bit lighter so you guys can see what's going on. But yeah, keep watching. Okay, so here I go. There's not a lot of dust, so I usually wipe it with, what's it called? Mineral spirits or paint thinner to get rid of the dust or whatever is left. But there wasn't much. It was just a lot of sanding. Honestly, I wouldn't even call it a sanding as much as I would call it just smoothing. You know, just in case there's like some loose, not loose, but you know, some sort of particles of dust or paint that got trapped into the paint while it was drying. So that's what that is. So I'm just gonna brush it, and then I'm going to start with the drawers because I'm impatient. So for this one, I'm going to use base wax from Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. I have plenty of that, and I'm going to use my Paint Pixie wax brush. So you don't have to use a brush, you can use a rag, but it's a lot easier. It's easy to hold, and you just rub it in, buff it in. It smells so good. It smells citrusy. I think there's some lemon in it. It says use in a well-ventilated area, but it's beeswax with lemon scent on it. It is perfectly fine. So I'm gonna do that and start, and you will see it darken as you apply the wax. That's just, it will dry off. I can show you the contrast between the two. So that looks darker, and it usually will, just a little bit more true to color, I guess you should say. This one's just matte and pastel, but you always want to buff it in all the way. Make sure it's absorbing really well. Make sure you get the edges. This is exciting, you guys. You have to trust the process, and usually there's always that stage where you just second guess yourself and what you're doing. You're like, is it gonna come out good? And so you just kind of, the more you work with stuff like this, the more you know the stages of it and how things work out. So sometimes you just have to trust the process. I didn't want to distress this too much because I think the cracks and whatever aging and distress comes out naturally, I think that would be good enough. I think that is what I want. I want it to be what it is. It doesn't need a lot of help from me. And you always want to do thin layers of wax. Let them dry, soak in, and then come back and do another one, buff it in.
And if the moon ignored the sun, then our tangled waves come undone. But if the moon falls by night, then I feel.
So I had to stop because a couple of our friends came over and I wanted to say hi, but I already did the top part, and what I'm gonna do is, I don't know if y'all are like this, but when I go shopping, if I'm like thrift store shopping or grocery shopping even, like I want to start from one end and go down every aisle to make sure I don't miss anything. And so it's the same thing with furniture. If you wanna, to make sure you don't miss anything, start on one end and don't skip. Do not skip. You just go down and do every corner, and then until you get to the end. That way you don't miss anything. So don't get excited and go over here and then come back over here and then go over here, because then you don't know if you're missing something. Pro tip. Anyway, I'm gonna keep waxing.
Bodies won't die, but if the moon gets stuck in the sky.
So here is my second supervisor, making sure I'm doing everything right. There he is. Okay, so this is the fun part, you guys. I've already buffed and sanded and waxed and buffed and waxed again and waxed again. So this is, we're at the home stretch now. I'm using my Paint Pixie brush, and this is their wax brush. Like I mentioned before, these are a little bit pricey, but they are so good for waxing. You can use a rag, but to get into those ridges, you're gonna need a brush. You can't really, you know, get your finger in there. I applied the wax with this, then I applied the wax to the entire piece, and then I washed it so that it didn't have any wax, and then I used the same brush to buff, to remove any excess wax, and I'm gonna use it again for buffing and cleaning. So I'm going to show you this part that I've already applied some dark wax to. The wax that I used here is Folk Art Home Decor. I got it from Joann's, and it works. It was great for the job, except it was a little too warm, too brownish reddish. I wanted something darker, like more hints of black than red and brown, if that makes any sense, so that it would tie in with this with the hardware that I was using. So I ended up changing the wax later on. I mean, I left this on, but I ended up applying a dark wax later on. Okay, so this is the brush that I ended up using for the dark wax. I don't use dark wax that much. I mean, I do, but it's usually for detail, so I don't care if this brush gets damaged. I also got it from Joann's, and I think it's about $12. So I'm gonna start by dipping it into the cap. That's where some of the product already is, and I'm going to go all in, you guys. Don't freak out. This looks like doo-doo for reals, but that is how it goes whenever you're applying wax. You just want to make sure it gets into the lower spots, because that's where it's actually going to end up staying. You know, everything that is in a high surface you're going to wipe off immediately, so you really are going to be left with the lower crevices and ridges and the corners. That's where the dark wax will stay. So go ahead and apply it. Like I said, this wax ended up being a little too brown for my liking, and by too brown I mean too warm, too reddish brown. I wanted something a little cooler tone. But you apply it and then you wipe it off immediately so that it doesn't set. And you'll see me do this with a rag right now. So we're mainly wiping off the excess, and then I'm gonna use the brush to get into those crevices and wipe some of the excess there too. So try and get as much as you can with the rag, because you don't want it on the brush. You want your brush to remain clean. So the more you can get with the rag, the better off it will be. Because if you end up having it dirty, then you're kind of not going to clean the excess. You're just gonna be working it in. You want it to absorb and soak up the excess, if that makes sense. So see, all of that stuff that was in the ridges is now gone. You can't really get that with a rag, I don't think. That's why the brush comes in handy. And at this point, all of that dark wax is everywhere. It kind of gives it that coffee stain look. You can see the contrast from the leg and from that detail, but it has too much, so I'm gonna use beeswax. This is also Sweet Pickins wax, and it's the clear wax, to kind of use as an eraser. That is a cool little trick. If you get carried away with your dark wax, you can use clear wax to kind of erase that. And this is one of the main reasons why you go in with clear wax first, so that the dark wax doesn't adhere immediately to the milk paint. So you always want to seal with something clear before you go in with the dark, so that the dark doesn't get absorbed. But see, it works like magic. You use it as an eraser, and I'm only using it on the high points of this piece, and the pieces that I don't want that coffee stain look. They'll say, where did we come from? So as you can imagine, there is a lot of that. I'm gonna do this to the entire piece, the sides, the edges, the top, everywhere. Work in the dark wax, clean it up with the clear wax, and then I'll start doing all of the detail with the gold wax. Look at it, you guys. You can see the contrast. If you don't clean it with the clear wax, it's going to look like old coffee stain, and all of it is going to look dirty and muddied up. So that's why you want to make sure you clean parts of it with the clear wax. So this is where we are. I ended up using Dixie Belle gilding wax for this, but it was a little too warm, and even the package says so. It says gold, warm gold, it's the name of it. So it was a little too yellow, and in contrast with the brown orangey finish of the wax, I wasn't really completely satisfied with it. So I went and did the entire process again, but this time I used DIY dark and decrepit wax, which is a black looking dark wax. And then I used gilding wax, Gilder's Paste wax, which is one of my favorite ones. It's not a warm gold, it's a more grayish old gold. And I'll show you the finished pictures so that you guys can tell what I'm talking about. It's not going to look as orangey. Yeah, you can see the contrast of this process, you guys. It is buffing and cleaning and wiping. I recorded that part of the process, but my file got damaged, so I think you guys get the idea from me showing you how I cleaned it up. And then you just go ahead and apply the gold wax to the high points of the vanity. Wherever you want gold, that's where you apply it. I mean, you just use your finger with it, so there is not a lot of science to that. You just gotta know where you want it. So here it is, you guys, in all of its glory. I think it came out so beautiful. Look at all that detail from all the dark wax and all of the gilding wax. It all came together so nicely. I was definitely proud of this project. And if you guys want to do something similar, you totally can. Just don't get discouraged with all of the waxing and buffing. Alright guys, that is it. It was definitely long, and it was a labor of love for sure. Whenever I was sanding, I was using my thumb to get into those ridges, and so my thumb was actually raw, you guys. You know, not raw completely, but it definitely hurt. Like, I felt like I was gonna get a blister because I had to get into those ridges, and it was kind of difficult. So labor of love. I was very, very proud of this vanity, and honestly, I wanted to keep it. I so wanted to keep it, but I decided to put it up in the shop. If you guys are interested in buying it, it is currently at my shop, and it's also on my Facebook link. So if you need more information, just shoot me a message, call Instagram, Facebook, and all of that stuff. It's gonna be linked below. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. I know I'm very new at this, and there's only a couple videos on my channel, but I'm definitely planning on putting up more. So please help me out and just like and follow. I know you probably hear that from any video, but that's how YouTube chooses what videos they promote or show to other people, just based on how many likes and follows you have and shares and all of that interaction, I guess. So I appreciate it if you took the time to do that, or, you know, hopefully this video was interesting to you. You learned something, or at least you were entertained. If you have any questions, comments, if there's anything I didn't cover, just leave questions below. I'll try and answer them as I get them, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Was that you living in someone else's dreams?